The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Well, you want a show? We've got a show for you today. Steve Hamer, former Vols basketball legend, will join us. He's tall, and he's going to give us some insight into the basketball Vols after their win last night. What do you expect out of this team? Also, Blake Toppmeyer will join us. He's a national college writer for USA Today Network and Gannett, and he thinks now there is an anti-SEC bias. We'll also have this day in Tennessee sports history, which is a good one, absolutely golden, as a matter of fact. We'll have the stat of the day as well. We'll see what Caleb pulls out of his bag of tricks. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. So a lot coming up on the program, and I will give you the latest of what I have been told about Nico Iamaleava. So until everything's cleared up in his head and or his shoulder, that will lead us off as Tennessee heads into this Georgia game. And also on the program today, Caleb's not afraid to call people out when it comes to, let's say, fibbing. He goes ahead and uses lying, misleading, gamesmanship, whatever you want to call it. But it appears as if Kirby Smart is questioning Josh Heupel's integrity a little bit. So we'll get to that. Click the thumbs up button. Please do that. Like and subscribe. We greatly appreciate it. Nico is questionable. We'll get to today's tough question, and that is whether or not he will play. I'll give you the latest based off my sources and who I have talked to. That's as of this morning. So we'll have some news for you here in just a moment. Again, click that like and subscribe button. We appreciate you being a part of the program. If you want to super chat, you can. We don't ask for that, but it goes to Quincy Calhoun's college fund. He's now 5 months old and just a few years away from Caleb having to stroke a big check to some university to be named later. And trust me, it ain't a lot of fun. Caleb, how are you, sir?
I am good. I am very offended that you would suggest that I question the integrity of any institutional leaders in college football. Okay?
It's true. It's true.
They are the most upstanding of gentlemen.
Yeah, and we're going to visit with Blake Toppmeyer, and he quoted the committee chairman, who happens to be the athletic director at Michigan. Is that a conflict of interest, Caleb?
I mean, yes, but there were more athletic directors with the ACC as there were last year, and they still kept Florida State out after going undefeated. So, but then you can maybe say they hate Florida State because Florida State's been trying to exit the ACC, so this was their punishment. So I guess you could go either way with that. So
yep. I think you could. All right, let's go ahead and get to it. Today's tough question brought to you by our good friends at Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. And what are we going to do? We're going to ask a question about Nico Iamaleava, as it is today's tough question, the show represented by Banks & Jones.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, I told you yesterday that I thought Nico Iamaleava would be questionable because while a concussion is a concussion and you're either in or you're out, Caleb, there's no fighting through the pain. There's no giving a shot to dull the pain. It's either you pass the protocol or you don't. And I have been told that he's passed several if not all the signs talking about Nico of the concussion protocol, but everybody's different. That might not be the case on Friday. That might not be the case on Saturday. So I'm not declaring he's going to play, but I will tell you this, based off who I've talked to, I believe that Nico will play. I believe he'll run out there on the first down. Here is what I have been told. I have been told that Nico's parents, as they should do, you're now a father, Caleb, so I'm sure you can understand this. They've reached out to other quarterbacks that have had concussion issues. They've done their fair share of research. Nico was on the practice field on Wednesday. Would it stun me if Gaston Moore was the starter because of Nico Iamaleava's concussion? No. But I think he will play. I think everybody's doing their due diligence. If this were UTEP, I don't think there's any question, Caleb, you would sit him, and that would be the prudent thing to do. The problem is this is the biggest game of the year. But even that being said, you cannot make a decision with this young man moving forward that might jeopardize his future. He is the franchise, Caleb, not just for this year, but for next. So this ultimately is going to lie not on Nico and not on Josh Heupel, but just on UT's medical staff. And if he continues to pass concussion protocols into the week, that's just where it is right now. Everybody's different. I wish I could give you a hard and true answer based off my sources. If you ask me right now to bet my mortgage on it, I would bet he plays, but I wouldn't want to take that bet. I'm at about 70% that he plays. Caleb, what do you make of him being deemed questionable by Josh Heupel?
I think either way I look at this, it's gamesmanship. If he's not playing, you don't want to out and out lie, but you don't want Georgia to know he's not playing because you still want them to at least have to prepare for him. So you're going to list as questionable. If he is playing, I mean, I would theoretically say you still want Georgia confused on what they have to do, so you list as questionable. Although I don't think look, if he is playing, listing him as questionable is not going to change up Georgia's game plan this week really that much, is it? So
no, it is funny that you bring that up because that's where I was going to go. Whether or not it's Nico or it's Gaston Moore, aren't you thinking that Georgia is thinking their best opportunity is to stop Tennessee's running game? This may be the first time that a defense truly walks up and challenges the Vols at the line of scrimmage, maybe with the exception of the Arkansas game. I'm talking about 8, 9 in the box because Tennessee has not proved consistently proficient at throwing the ball downfield, Caleb. I mean, that's the way I would defend Tennessee, no matter if it's Gaston, Nico, Casey, Brent Schaefer. I just love saying that. I don't think it really matters. You're probably going to defend Tennessee the same way.
Yeah, I think so too. And the only difference with Gaston Moore is you probably won't have your linebackers in spy at all in that situation. You'll just be sending them on blitzes the whole game. I think that would be the one big difference with Georgia is with Gaston Moore, because as far as what I've seen, I could be wrong, Dave, but it doesn't look like Gaston Moore is much of a runner. Is that fair to say?
Yes, very fair to say. Yes. It fits the Caucasian stereotype like we've thrown out there with Will Brooks. But in this season of overachievers, and for Cooper Mays, it's been a series of years of being overachiever, and Will Brooks has been an overachiever, still technically a walk-on. Wouldn't it fit the narrative if Gaston Moore, a walk-on who people question his athletic ability, and he's not very athletic, wouldn't it would fit the narrative if he went to Georgia and won that football game?
Oh, yes. I mean, it really would. You're talking about Will Brooks, right? Or
No. I was talking about Gaston. If he goes down there, given what Will Brooks has done, the fact that I think this is a team of overachievers, and that's not to belittle their talent at all. I think this is a team of overachievers that plays hard and has great culture. It would be apropos if Gaston Moore went down there and got what would be the most monumental win considering a backup quarterback is in there that I can ever remember. The only one that I could think of would be at Georgia when Tennessee almost pulled the upset with James Banks running out there at quarterback. And that was when practice was open, Caleb, and we didn't know that James Banks was going to play quarterback that much. And I'm not sure Tennessee knew. I think they had about 12 plays ready for him. So that brings me back to Gaston Moore. How much would that fit the narrative if Gaston Moore goes down there and beats Georgia? And I think it's doable.
So there's actually there's another level to this, which is the reason it'd be a great underdog story. James Banks was a 5-star recruit. James Banks was considered a generational talent as a potential quarterback, wasn't he? As a guy who could have eventually turned into a superstar. So they just started him before he was ready, but he had raw talent. No one considers Gaston Moore a future generational talent at quarterback.
No.
So it's almost the reverse of this, where if you do it and you go win, I mean, I understand the talk of Coach Prime and Deion with Coach of the Year this year because of what he's done in Colorado, because that's pretty impressive. But if Tennessee has Gaston Moore, goes down to Athens and beats Georgia, I'm just saying Josh Heupel should be crowned Coach of the Year right there. Shouldn't he? Just throw out the Coach of the Year award and give it to him. That'd be the most impressive coaching move. And you're right, it's kind of doable. And that's kind of the crazy part about it. So I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's certainly possible. I will give you that, Dave.
Pointed out on the message board that it was CJ Leak who started that game at Georgia, and they got James Banks in there really quickly. The thing I would remind you is that Chris Leak was leaning towards or committed to the Vols. I think he was just leaning towards the Vols at that point, and that's why they took CJ Leak. And Chris Leak was coming to Tennessee, period, into discussion. And they were sitting in the stands at Sanford Stadium, and they saw their son get surpassed by a guy that they knew didn't have the best work ethic, running around with these 10 or 12 plays that they had, which were a lot of bootlegs, a lot of design quarterback runs. And they said, no, CJ just got the short end of the stick. I'm going to keep it clean. And there's no way Chris is going there. That game really, looking back at it, for some of our younger viewers out there and listeners, set the SEC in this different motion that if Chris Leak is still, if he becomes a Vol, I'm not sure that Philip Fulmer doesn't keep his job through the 2009 season and probably is Tennessee's all-time wins leader in terms of a head coach, passing Neyland. And I think he was roughly 28 wins off of that. So that day in Athens defined the SEC, both with Leak at Florida and Leak not at Tennessee, for the next half a decade.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, it was probably. Do you think it was a mistake by Fulmer? I get that you think it was a great coaching game, but was it worth losing Chris Leak for a shot in the dark chance to beat Georgia in a year where you were so wrecked by injuries you were going to go 8-4 anyway?
This is where you and I are a little bit different. And I'll give you this. And there have been times that you've been right. Like when you said Tennessee should throw the SEC basketball tournament. I'm like, you don't throw any game. It sets the wrong tone. So, but you were right. I think that you go out there game in and game out, just trying to win that particular week. I don't think that you go out there and think about the future 2, 3, 4 years down the road, because you never know. And besides that, let's be honest. CJ Leak had the worst delivery and gave them no chance of beating the Bulldogs or any other significant team that year. Can we agree on that?
I mean, you don't think do you honestly think James Banks gave him that significantly better of a chance to beat Georgia than CJ Leak would have given him?
Let's put it this way. I think it gave them a 40% chance, because they almost did. I mean, they had to kick an onside kick, but if not for a play right before the onside kick, they could have taken the lead, if I remember correctly. I think with CJ Leak at quarterback, they had zero chance. So I think it went from 0 to like 30 or 40%.
All right, well, that's a good enough number. That's worth it then. I thought it took them from like 10 to 15% or something like that. So 0 to 40 significant. Okay, so to this point, look, I think so. What? Okay, let's just throw this out here, Dave. What if Gaston Moore starts and Tennessee beats Georgia? do you all of a sudden say, you know what, we're just going to ride this Gaston Moore train out the rest of the year? Like, not that Nico's not our future, but, we did just beat Georgia. And does that happen?
Okay. I do want to address that because honestly, when it comes out of your mouth and when it went through my mind this morning, the first response was, Dave, Caleb, that's silly, but it's not the worst idea in the world. Today's tough question. And the other question, if you want to take part in our poll question, if Gaston Moore is a starter, Tennessee can win, will win, won't win. We'll address that. But if Gaston Moore is the starter against Georgia and wins, is he the starter against UTEP? Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. Banks. Okay, let me just throw this out there as a for instance, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but this is a beatable Georgia team. Okay, so let's say Gaston Moore has that dozen plays like James Banks had. Okay, and they consist of a lot of play action. They consist of 3-step drops, getting the ball out, and Tennessee's proficient on offense. They're dominant on defense. Maybe a Boo Carter special teams play because he's very close to breaking a punt return, and they somehow get the win. Does that mean you ride the hot hand? No, it doesn't. But it may mean this, that he plays against UTEP and starts because there's not only the concussion to think about, Caleb, there's the shoulder, which is also problematic. So you would allow him a little bit more time to get healthier. That may be the case whether or not he wins or loses because Tennessee's going to beat UTEP with Quincy Calhoun at quarterback.
Well, this gives me a lot of what we're talking about gives me a lot of Rick Clausen, Eric Ainge 2005 vibes, where Eric Ainge got wrecked against LSU, down 21-0. Rick Clausen comes back and leads the comeback. By the way, Dave, I still don't know how Rick Clausen led that comeback. I watched him the rest of the year. He was a terrible quarterback. And I feel very comfortable saying that now. Like, I don't care what people say about winning Rick Clausen over Ainge. Eric Ainge was a better quarterback. Rick Clausen had the worst arm ever of a starter at Tennessee history.
Quick Uncle Dave story. The only person that I've ever interviewed that said, I will not answer a question from you was Rick Clausen during a press conference.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. I wrote a column how recruiting package deals don't work. And I specifically pointed to Sims, for instance, the Sims family, and I pointed to the Leak family, and I brought up the Clausen family. And boy, they read that not the way I intended it. They say the reader's always right, but I didn't intend it that way to call them out. I just said that typically those package deals don't work, do they?
No, they don't work. They don't work. Tennessee tried it twice with the Leak family and the Clausen. Actually, you're right. They tried it 3 times, and none of them worked.
I can only think of one that worked really well, and that would be Del Baker, Vincent Yarbrough, who were half brothers for the basketball team.
Well, they obviously recruited Eric Berry so they could get Evan Berry later.
That's exactly what they did. I really thought Evan and Elliott were borderline guys. I kind of thought they got an offer at the time because of the Tennessee legacy, which you typically do not do.
Evan was at least a 4-star. He could have been a good safety, just never developed into it. Elliott was just, maybe they got Elliott to get Evan because Evan was an All-American kick returner. I want to point out, to the Nico situation, though, guys, this is all speculating because we still think Nico's going to play. But, if Gaston Moore comes in and doesn't play well, but they somehow win, which is what happened with Rick Clausen at LSU in 2005, because the only reason Tennessee won that game was Jamarcus Russell played like complete dog, and Les Miles is the worst in-game coach in the history of in-game coaches. I got to be honest, you do maybe create a little bit of a rift at that point. But yeah, I do think you have to go back with Nico. Now, we're talking all this I'm with you. I still think Nico's going to play. I mean, I wrote what you wrote, Dave. So I want to cite a couple of things, which is that you reported that a source told you Nico has cleared concussion protocol. I was listening to Sports Animal yesterday. Josh and Swain had Austin Price on, and Austin Price is reporting that Nico's been doing more and more at practice every day and is trending in the right direction.
That's what I've been told.
Yeah. So if that's the case, look, we talked about this yesterday. Jimmy Hyams brought it up. The thing everybody's missing, it may not be his head. It may be his shoulder. I mean, that could be the real issue right now. He may have already cleared the concussion issue.
I've not been led to believe that's the case. My understanding with concussion protocol is you not only have to pass it early in the week, but you also have to pass it later in the week. And I think that's the issue. Travis brings up a couple of good points. One, what would Drinkwitz do in this situation? He's standing business, Josh. That's exactly what he would do. But Travis does bring up a really good point. We act like Nico has been a superstar. He hasn't. He's been adequate throughout the course of the season. But I think since halftime of the Alabama game, he's been a different player and would give the Vols a substantially better chance of beating Georgia.
Significantly so. Significantly so. Yeah. I mean, guys, we watched Gaston more in the second half of that Mississippi State game. Dave, Tennessee ran it every time to just try to get out of there with the win. When they had to throw it, the best Gaston Moore did, as Jimmy Hyams pointed out, was draw pass interference penalties.
Yep. And I know there's a bunch of reports out there and somebody saying on 3 reporting that he's going to play. Well, I've said the whole time that I believe he will play, but I don't think it's cut and dry. And Mucho Boomin brings up a great point. We have the better team overall. Defense, special teams, and offense stay composed, win turnover margins, and we win on the road. Turnover margin is the big one. Hit like and subscribe. Hit the thumbs up. Give us a vote on our poll question, which is if Gaston Moore is a starter, Tennessee can win, will win, won't win. 75% says can. 15% say will. 12% say won't. I think can, but that's kind of a cop-out to some extent, to be real honest with you. It is time for us to take a look at Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart has some thoughts on Nico's injury, as he hinted that Josh Heupel might be playing gamesmanship. Go ahead and share that with us. It's What the H? And it's brought to you by our good friends at Work Trucks.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, Kirby Smart's an old school coach. This concussion protocol thing's probably new and a little awkward to him. So he probably just says, get some smelling salts and run out there, idiot. Because he calls his own players idiots. So what did Kirby Smart have to say about Nico potentially playing?
So, guys, I'm sorry I can't pull up the audio. It was on the SEC teleconference yesterday morning when he said this. But he was asked if the status listed of opposing players on that injury report, if he takes them as fact. And this was regards to Nico Iamaleava, whether or not he'll play. Kirby Smart's response is this, Dave. Quote, "It depends on the team, but honestly, I don't pay much attention to it. I mean, I look at it and see it, but there's not a lot of control you have over that, right? So when it comes out, it doesn't matter if you're skeptical of it or not. You've got to prepare your team to play. Teams we play in the SEC have capable backups. So once you're in the probable or questionable area, you know there's a chance they could play. So that's what you go with." The entire answer was political, except the first line. It depends on the team. He let that slip.
Okay, so basically what he is saying, I think, and you brought this up this morning, and I hadn't heard that comment. He's saying that Josh Heupel, he believes, is more likely to play the gamesmanship role, or as you call it, just straight out lie. He is more willing to do that than most coaches. I think that all coaches are kind of in the same category, that if they've got a chance to play gamesmanship like this, they're going to do it. But do you think Josh Heupel does it more than other coaches, or do we just cover them and we know about Lance Hurd's supposed to play against Oklahoma? We know Cooper Mays is supposed to play against Florida last year.
I think he does it more than other coaches.
I do too.
I do too. Now, yeah, he doesn't full on lie the way a Butch Jones did, where Butch Jones lashes out at the media, and he doesn't do that. But by the way, Dave, our go-to, funny enough, is always the Shy Tuttle thing where he said Shy Tuttle landed on a helmet, and then he lashed out at the media, fake news. 2 weeks later, he goes out and says Darrell Taylor suspended for an undisclosed amount of time. The whole story was that Darrell Taylor punched Shy Tuttle. But, he says Darrell Taylor suspended, Shy Tuttle landed on a helmet, but yeah, we can't really piece together what happened. So Josh Heupel does his best to not reveal anything. A little bit annoying, honestly, because in my opinion, I'm like, really? Do you really think that this is going to affect how teams prepare for you? But he doesn't. And I think Kirby Smart said that because he's playing Josh Heupel this week. And yeah, I think Kirby Smart doesn't believe Josh Heupel for 1 second of who's playing and who's not playing. I do think Kirby Smart just straight up lied when he said that there's capable backups there on every team. No, there's not. Not anymore.
Out of championship contenders, who other than Texas has 2 quarterbacks that could win a national title? It's just with the transfer portal, that ain't the case.
Georgia themselves. I mean, they have Gunnar Stockton and they have Jaden Rashada.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you that one. But I wonder if that's going to be the case moving forward. Now, well, one of those guys I would think would transfer after Carson Beck's gone. But for the most part, you don't have a capable backup. It's not like, when Tennessee had A.J. Suggs.
Who was not really a capable backup.
No, he wasn't.
He was just better than Joey Matthews.
He was just better than Joey, man. We should get a shirt done that says that. No, I don't want to do that because Joey Matthews is a police officer, and I don't want to get pulled over in Sevierville and go, hey, your shirt says, at least I'm better than Joey Matthews.
This is like the whole, when I worked near West Virginia, there are shirts in West Virginia that say, at least we're not Mississippi.
To me, I mean, Kirby Smart, do you believe he knows if Nico's going to play? Because I still don't know if you've seen that Connor Stallions special, but it is fantastic. And there's this subculture of these managers and sycophants, basically, that all get together on Sunday and they like to affect the games somewhat and they share information. There's also coaches that know each other. And heck, Georgia's got players that celebrate with the other team when they win. So do you think Kirby Smart has a better indication than you and I do over whether or not Nico will play?
I think Kirby Smart, I'm not so sure he fully knows, but that's a great point you bring up, Dave, because here's the truth. How is this all connected? There's a third party here that we keep talking about, Dave, and that third party is Vegas, because Vegas has sources tied into every program. Those sources tied into every program can connect back to Vegas to connect back to the other program. So you don't think, Dave, a source close to Georgia, that you don't think Vegas is source close to Georgia, got a tip from Vegas's source close to Tennessee out in the desert about whether or not Nico is playing, and revealed that information to Georgia.
Well, have you watched that Connor Stallions thing yet?
No, I haven't. I do need to watch it.
Once you watch that, you will be even more affirmed in what you just said. Because these guys talk. These guys that are out there drying off the football in between plays on a rainy day like we have in Knoxville today, these guys that wash jocks and all those sorts of things, they talk. And there's financial incentive to do it. They've done so, I think, from Vegas. But there's also the, hey, I'm pretty cool. I'm liked. When I'm on this conference call on a Sunday after the game and I say, hey, my name's Bob. I'm at Oklahoma, and I'm telling you that Brent Venables is about to get fired, and he's going to do something exotic defensively. Well, they like that power. They like the people saying, oh, well, thanks, Bob. That's pretty cool info. So, yeah, I've said for a long time that practice can't be totally open because you have like 50 reporters now, okay? But practice could be partially open to a high standard of credentialed individuals like it used to be. It was basically me, Brent Hubbs, Chris Lowe, Andy Staples, I feel like I'm missing someone, but that was basically it that was allowed to be there at practice. And there was an understanding that if something happened out of the ordinary at practice, you would ask Philip Fulmer about it. And then if he said, I don't want that out, then you didn't put that out. And that was the understanding. But I've said since they decided to close practice, it is not the media you should be worried about. It's some of those guys like Big Orange Vol 2023 that you're reading on message boards. Some of those are managers and people with the program. So I don't go on message boards. I never have, never will, because nobody's putting their name next to it. So I don't want to put my name next to a report. But there are some reports out there that are probably accurate because Big Orange Vol 2023 wants to seem important.
Yeah, this brings me way back to the Rivals, when Rivals dominated the era of college, when sharing stuff was more about chat room communities than it was social media, which you remember that era, Dave, very well, right?
Yes.
The unique thing about those, and this is what's always been the case, they got credit for breaking every single story that ever came down the pipe. It was broken on a chat board. Here's the problem with that. For every story that was broken on a chat board, there were about 15 to 20 salacious, outlandish stories that you knew weren't true, okay? It was like they had insane stuff on those chat boards. And so, like, okay, yeah, like basically any possible thing that could be true was put on those chat boards, or any possible story that could apply to somebody was put on those chat boards. So naturally, of course, you're going to, hit the lottery and come across one that happens to be true sometimes. That's how they did that. It was the it's like if the National Enquirer gets a story right. Okay, they get one story right, but like how many false stories do they report before they get that one right? And yeah, that's how the chat boards often worked. I think that I do think there are sources though within these programs that do this. And I think Kirby Smart, this is what's throwing me off about it. If that's the case, why is Josh Heupel playing gamesmanship? Because, okay, let's put this out here. Quick history lesson on all of this. The most secretive thing ever done in college football, as Dave knows the history of, was in 1970, Bear Bryant took his Alabama team to a camp away from everybody and installed the wishbone without anybody knowing about it. And Alabama took the SEC by firestorm that year. He could never pull that off today, could he?
No. And it wouldn't be because the media... I mean, you could go out there and you could let the media watch them stretch, run a pro style offense, and then kick the media out and still be able to pull that off, Caleb. But these message board guys would say, watch for the wishbone. And look, I got like 15 replies on the message board. I mean, certainly we want attention. We want viewers. We want that sort of thing. But we stake our reputation every day. We're not Big Orange Ball 2023. Well, here's what I think of Kirby Smart and whether or not he knows. And it's brought to you by What the H, brought to you by Work Trucks. What the H if you're going somewhere else, because Work Trucks is all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. Cargo vans, utility body trucks, and the Knapheide work bodies installed. Pickup trucks of all sizes. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks, and that's a fact. Service industry, Work Trucks. Work Trucks carries the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go online to worktruckswithannxllc.com. They'll find the perfect truck, outfit it, make sure it fits your needs to a T. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. Worktruckswithannxllc.com. I don't think he knows. Kirby Smart knows. And that's our poll question if you want to take part on our YouTube page. I don't think he knows, because I don't think deep down that Nico and Josh Heupel know. I don't think deep down they're 100% that he plays on Saturday. I think they think he plays, but I don't think they know he plays.
I could get with that. I'm not so sure they know he plays either. I would be shocked at this point quite honestly, Dave, if he doesn't play. But this is weird to say, but this could just be honest. Do we think Kirby Smart, though, he just went off playing Ole Miss when he gave this quote? Was he throwing a shot at Lane Kiffin more than Josh Heupel?
Maybe, because didn't Lane claim like 38 people on his injury report? Steven says Nico has a concussion, a bruised shoulder, not separated, and other stuff that has been put out there. You're absolutely right, Steven. That's what we reported. Steven goes on to say, as of last night, he had passed off all concussion protocols. That's what I have been told as well, and that's what we reported yesterday. That I was actually told that he passed most of them previous to last night. So I've been told he's passed them all, but could he have a regression? Yeah, it's possible. Are they going to give him another test? Yes, they will. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Coming up, Blake Toppmeyer will discuss the fact that it looks like the college football playoff has an anti-SEC bias. Also, Steve Hamer will join us. He's fantastic, former Vols. We'll discuss Tennessee's basketball victory last night. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. This day in Tennessee sports history. Up next is a absolute monster one. Banks & Jones, other attorneys say they'll go to trial. They won't. banksandjones.com.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2024 Ford Maverick XLT all-wheel drive, $31,990. 23 Ford Expedition 4x4 Limited, $66,590. 2023 Ford F-150 XLT Super Crew 4x4, $47,995. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Varner Ford, built for the game.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Stay hydrated with Peak IV Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live life to your fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. PeakIVHydration.com. If we can drop that in the chat, PeakIVHydration.com. You can order the patch, and it works for energy or hydration. Addressing our chat board, as we always want you to be a part of the program. And it is David saying, smelling salts and opiates, get him out there. William saying that's all we need is a stone quarterback. Caleb, I know you're a big opiate guy. How much could that affect Nico's play?
What? You think I'm a big opiate guy?
I don't know. I don't really know. I don't think I really know what opiates are. I know that I never was in danger for oxycodone or Oxycontin because the times that I have been prescribed oxycodone, I know it's been a very serious thing. I don't want to joke about it, but I was never in danger of that, Caleb, because like when I suffered a whatever the case may be, like my hip replacement, for instance, or whatever, when they would give me oxycodone, right? I would have trouble taking it because it made my nose itch so bad that I would rub my nose until it was red, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I don't know why, but that one part of my body just itched, and I would rub my nose until I thought it was going to fall off. So I had to stop taking the stuff.
That's the reason you stopped taking it. It's good to know.
I mean, I'm not perfect. I've drank my fair share of bottles of bourbon, but I will just tell you that would have never been my drug of choice because my nose couldn't have handled it. Quality Tire Pros, that's where my car is now, and they're serving Chattanooga since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Stop by and tell Bo that Off the Hook Sports says hello. And it is time for This Day in Tennessee Sports History. This Day in Tennessee Sports History is brought to you by our great friends at the UPS store in Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. The link is right down below. So this day in Tennessee Sports History is what, Caleb?
It is the 26-year anniversary of the legendary Stumble and Fumble.
That's hot.
Yeah, that is hot. It's yes, on this day 26 years ago, Tennessee overcame a 21-3 deficit to beat the Arkansas Razorbacks 20-24, helped in large part by Billy Ratliff getting a great push on the offensive line and forcing a fumble late in the game that Tennessee recovered near midfield and went down to score. But here's my hot take about Tennessee's comeback and the stumble and fumble to beat Arkansas in 1998. Are you ready, Dave?
That's hot.
Yes.
It's the most overvalued play in Tennessee football history and did nothing to impact the outcome of that season.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
You ready for this?
I know you've told me before.
Wait, let me just tell the full story for the audience.
Okay. It's absurd.
Tennessee had one timeout left. There was about minute 20 remaining. Basically, they were going to get the ball back. I don't know how many seconds, maybe 30. They only needed a Jeff Hall field goal. Jeff Hall was the most clutch kicker in football that year. T. Martin was the king of game-winning drives that year. So they might have beaten Arkansas still in that game. But let's say they lose to Arkansas that day, guys. Let's say they lose to Arkansas. Tennessee would have gone and beaten Kentucky and Vanderbilt. They would have played Arkansas in the SEC championship in a rematch. Guarantee you they're not overlooking Arkansas again. And Dave, I think even you would say if Tennessee had lost to Arkansas in the regular season, they would have blown out Arkansas in the SEC championship then, right? Because they were the better team.
I just don't see Tennessee making it without winning that game.
Wait, but how? Here's what I'm trying to say. Tennessee blows out Arkansas in the SEC championship game. They still finished number 1 in the BCS because UCLA and Kansas State, who were undefeated going into that day, both lost. Please tell me who finishes in the top 2 ahead of Tennessee.
Would you agree with me that on that Sunday after the game that it would have felt like all hope is lost? Because if you agree with me there, then Tennessee wouldn't have played with the same zeal the rest of the season, and I'm not sure they beat Arkansas in the SEC championship game.
First of all, I would maybe have agreed with you. I'd have to go back and fully look at the rankings, but I don't think that's relevant, Dave. Their next 2 games were Kentucky and Vanderbilt. Would they have had to play with zeal to beat Kentucky and Vanderbilt?
No.
Okay, no.
Not to be
then
over the list.
Then they go to the SEC championship game that Saturday. Based on BCS rankings and schedule strength, Dave, Tennessee would have been number 3 in the BCS going into that day behind UCLA and Kansas State. UCLA is playing a ranked Miami. Kansas State's playing a ranked Texas A&M. You don't think they'll play with zeal knowing that they have a chance to go if one of those teams lose? Of course they will. And by the way, not only would Tennessee have still gone to the national championship game, they still would have been number 1 in the BCS ahead of every other team.
Okay.
Look at the formula.
I don't believe that you would have lost to Arkansas, even though Arkansas was undefeated and got that sort of treatment. But we can agree to disagree.
Florida State would have gotten the treatment after losing to NC State that year?
I'm still a little bit of the mindset that Tennessee gets the short end of the stick. If
you have to name who would have gone ahead of them. You have to name who would have gone ahead of them.
I don't have one right now. Let me do my research. But
yeah, because there is none.
Speaking
Tennessee would have been number one.
Yes, speaking of the short end of the stick, I think Tennessee got the short end of the stick in the college football playoff rankings that came out on Tuesday night. Tennessee beats Mississippi State. So in and of itself, I don't think that you automatically move up. But with the Georgia loss and the Miami loss, I thought Tennessee would move up to number 5. That didn't happen. Caleb, the college football playoff committee chairman, had some reasoning behind that. What did he say? Because whatever he says, I'm just going to go ahead and say,
They're like, that is total bullshit.
All right, but what did he say?
So this is Ward Manuel who said this. By the way, he is the athletic director at Michigan, which you brought up earlier. So you can talk about maybe the conflict of interest there. But
I'll say more than this conflict of interest. I think this is a total setup so that the SEC just gets 4 teams in, despite what they may deserve, because the Big Ten is only going to get 4 teams at best in. I think that's exactly what this is. I think this is a setup to screw over either Tennessee or whoever should be that 5th team and make it, period.
That's very true. By the way, before we go any further, I have to address 2 questions. Travis and Steve asked about Arkansas, how they would have finished number 1 that year and undefeated in 98. No, because Tennessee would have beaten them in the SEC title game in a rematch. That's my point. Okay, so back to the point we're talking about here. Ward Manuel says that we thought the drop was actually about Nico Iamaleava's injury. And I would look, they have to take that into account. So Dave, I would have been fair on that, right? And you probably would have been too, right? If they were just honest and said, yeah, it's about the injury and we need to know if he's healthy, I think I can give him a pass on that because they do have to take that into account.
No, I'm not okay with that. Now, if he would have snapped his leg in half and you knew that he wasn't going to play the rest of the season, then yes, I'm okay with that. But I'm not okay with the guy going into the week questionable. No, I'm not. I wouldn't be okay with that either. Now, I understand what happened with Hendon Hooker because Tennessee also got hammered against South Carolina. I understand that, but no, I wouldn't go with that line of thinking. So we may differ on that.
Well, it doesn't matter anyway, because here's what he said. He said in an interview with Adam Sparks of the Knoxville News Sentinel, who covers Tennessee, Adam Sparks asked him about this. He said, quote, "It really came down to the play last week of both Indiana and BYU, both winning big games on their schedule. So in looking at it, as we assessed all the teams, we just felt like Indiana and BYU earned the 5 and 6 slot and Tennessee stayed where they are." All right, guys, let me just point this out. Indiana beat Michigan by 5. Michigan's 5 and 5 right now. So that's a big win on their schedule. BYU beat, and by the way, Ward Manuel, again, athletic director at Michigan. BYU beat Utah by 1 and needed very poor officiating to do it. Utah was 4 and 5 and on their 3rd string quarterback. How can you say you vaulted BYU based on a big win? Oh, because what? It's an in-state game, BYU, Utah, the Mormon rivalry out there. Like, what? How can you say it's based on that when Utah is a losing record? They're down to their 3rd string quarterback and BYU needed officiating to win. They call me crazy. Aren't you supposed to watch the games and not just go based on resume? Aren't you supposed to actually look at how they play in the games? Isn't this part of this process?
I don't think they are at this point.
He's lying.
I don't think they watch all the games. I mean, let's remember, all these guys still have full-time jobs. Okay, so how many games do you need to watch each and every week to be best informed? 20? Probably 20?
Probably.
15, 20 games?
Yeah.
Now, I know that my television service has the cut-ups, which are really cool, which you can watch a whole game in 30 minutes. But that's still 10 hours, bare minimum, right?
Yep.
So are they adding 10 hours to their schedule? Are they watching all these games? Absolutely not. Will they do so before the final playoff projection? I don't think so either. Guys, I think this is a TV show. Each and every week this has come out. And Caleb, you're the history guy. You could probably go back and look this up. There's been some change that nobody expected, like when Alabama passed Tennessee. or there's been like this past week. And it's not just Tennessee. They want a TV show. They don't want to come up and just throw chalk out there. Can you imagine, for instance, if the basketball tournament committee, the NCAA basketball tournament committee, did a prelim before the conference tournaments, and like on a Sunday, they said, this is what it's going to look like. And then the conference tournaments played chalk, and they come out on Sunday, and it's basically the same thing. You don't want this to be the same show every week. You don't want it to be predictable. Guys, this is a television show. And we talked about this with Jimmy Himes yesterday. They want this to be compelling. And there's nothing compelling about just moving people up, as the AP did to a fault for a number of years. There's nothing compelling about that, Caleb. They want this to be Friends or Seinfeld. They want it to be something you've got to tune into every week. And it's not if they just do the logical stuff from week to week.
I think you're right. But it's laughably stupid how they do it. And they're just, I mean, how does anybody, they're going to kill the credibility of, here's the sacrifice you make with sports, Dave. You sometimes have to risk the fact that a dull TV show will happen to maintain your credibility. Otherwise, you will lose viewers, period. Isn't that the nature of sports more than anything else?
Yes.
You have to accept that things will be dull sometimes. And in the NFL,
I've covered more bad games than I have great games. Okay,
exactly.
Like the Texas El Pasos of the world, it's 45-3. Do you think I really wanted to be covering that game instead of watching maybe Georgia, Alabama on another television?
No, not at all. Not at all. And you cover those games, but you accept it because it's worth it, because at some point you're going to get a Tennessee-Florida game that goes into overtime and in a top 5 matchup and Tennessee wins. You're right. This is the issue with television, the internet, everything now. Everything has to be more dramatic than it previously was. They do this. I mean, I'll just say it. They do it with politics. We just had an election. Dave, how many times have you heard over the last 5 election cycles, this is the most important election of your life?
Yes,
like,
a lot.
Every single election now is an existential threat because, and by the way, spoiler alert, they never are. They're not existential threats. You have an election every 2 years and 4 years, and you can change things very quickly in this country if you don't like it. Okay. But they have to do that because they need the ratings and they need the views, and both sides do. And you're seeing the same with sports now. You need more and more chaos to outdo the chaos you saw the week before, just to keep the viewers interested. I mean, this is so crazy, Dave, because I think back to how the Super Bowl was branded. I don't understand why this is the business model, because let's just take the Super Bowl, for instance. The Super Bowl got branded as the biggest event in sports. And most of the games before 2000 were just terrible dud blowouts that put you
terrible. Yeah, throughout my lifetime, when I was growing up watching football, I remember, yes, absolutely horrible.
Yeah, and it still got branded that, because you know what? When it was exciting like that, then when you get the Titans-Rams Super Bowl that I'm still sick over, where the Titans came up 1 yard short, it was just a huge storyline. And so I think you're right. I think the playoff committee is purposely creating chaos, so we're all going to keep watching. I don't believe them for 1 second that they're going to keep them here. And the thing that upsets me is that Ward Manuel says that the injury to Nico Iamaleava was not a factor. Now, again, you think that it should be, and I understand that, but I don't think
No. I don't think it should be mid-season.
Okay, but you don't think the nature of this injury, the timing of this injury you don't think it should be a factor because of those two things, basically. And I actually am fine with that. I think I probably agree with you. What I'm trying to say is that I think Ward Manuel is lying. I think they did factor in the injury to Nico Iamaleava. I think they threw that in to say either they are purposely doing what you're saying, which is trying to create chaos just for the heck of it, or they took the Nico Iamaleava injury into account and they're lying to us. I don't know. Which one do you think it is, Dave? Or do you think it's both?
I'll address that. It's open enrollment time when it comes to Medicare. Medicare Misty takes care of you. No cost from Medicare Misty. And she's registered, licensed in over 40 states, so she can take care of you. I'll answer that very question in 30 seconds.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
I'll answer it with this. A 10-2 team, Tennessee team, that doesn't make the SEC championship game and doesn't play for a championship and get an automatic bid, a 10-2 team without Nico, let's say something were to happen in this final month of the regular season, would be the team left out of the college football playoff if there are 5 10-2 teams. Period. End of discussion. I have no doubt. Do you?
No, unless another quarterback somewhere else gets hurt. Like if Jackson Dart gets hurt, they're leaving Ole Miss out at that point.
Right. But if everything else is...
Yeah, if everything... Yes, they're going to do that. But they haven't denied that they would do that. I'm saying this week. I think this week they're factoring it into account. I don't know what you think, Dave, but I think
that to me is absurd.
But he says they're not. I'm saying, do you think he's lying when he says they're
I think
not?
he's lying. And I hate using the word lying. I think he's lying. I think he's flat out lying.
I'm mostly with you. I think he's totally lying on that. There's no way you could say BYU.
Well,
Also,
let me take that back. I think he's lying as a whole. I think it's the television show thing, and that maybe gives them an excuse not to move Tennessee up and to have BYU and Indiana move past them. I think it gives him an excuse. I think to come out there and say anything other than, hey, guys, it's a television show. Check out the ratings. I think anything other than that's a lie.
Well, and by the way, we're talking about Tennessee, and his excuse was terrible because, again, let's be clear. Okay, can we be fair on this with Indiana versus BYU? Can we at least say, even though Michigan's 5-5, beating Michigan at Michigan, that gives Indiana a little more credibility than beating Utah when they're 4-5 and have a third-string quarterback gives BYU credibility. Is that fair to say?
Can we say, yeah, comparable.
Yeah, Indiana. Yeah, you can maybe make a case with Indiana. BYU's is just ridiculous. They beat Utah. Utah's terrible and on their third-string quarterback, and they won off a terrible call. It makes no sense. But I'll be honest. I'm going to go further, Dave. If you're Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, you should be upset too. Because actually, and I'll even say SMU. I'll throw SMU in there. You know why? What is Miami doing ahead of you? Let's just take Miami and SMU, 2 ACC teams. Both have 1 loss. Miami just lost to Georgia Tech. Why is Miami ahead of you if you're SMU? And I mean, outside of brand name and outside of we got to keep them in the playoff ranking because we want them to be intrigued. Their resumes are pretty comparable, honestly. And I think it's again, you're right. It's the TV show of all of this. And look, I've been very critical of the whole college football playoff format. I'm more critical of it now. They're getting what they wanted going into the last 3 weeks of the season because there is a lot of chaos because there's such a cluster of teams. They're getting exactly what they wanted.
Hey, this goes back before your time. There's always been these arguments who should play for a championship, who the number 1 team is. Sometimes it was the AP. Sometimes it was a coach's poll, who gets recognized, blah, blah, blah. There's been split national championships. More than any other sport, that's what college football is built on. The discussion around the game more so than what happens on the field. The Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Go to hemphousechatwith2ts.com. Hemphousechatwith2ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. Hooked for 10% off. Blake Toppmeyer will join us next. Is there an anti-SEC bias? We've discussed it. We'll get into it more with Blake, who does a fantastic job. Stay tuned. More Off the Hook Sports, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, here we go. The show brought to you in part by City Heating and Air Conditioning, 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. CityHeatandAir.com. We're joined by a very special guest. Blake Toppmeyer joins us, the senior national college football columnist for USA Today Network. That's a mouthful. And how can you be a senior, Blake? You're a younger guy.
Yeah, well, I'm getting up there, I guess, but still looking youthful, so I'll take it.
Does that make John Adams a super senior columnist?
I think so, yeah. He's one of those COVID seniors that just won't ever leave.
That's right. He's still got like 8 years of eligibility. Blake, I thought your column was spot on that there might be an anti-SEC bias. Why did you think that when you came away from the college football playoff show that is a television show? I remind everyone. Why did you come away thinking there might be an anti-SEC bias?
Well, you look at a couple things. One, start with Tennessee. If they started out at number 7 in the rankings, like, okay, if that's where the committee thought they were last week, then why are they still at number 7 this week? It didn't make a lot of sense when a couple teams lost ahead of them, and you had Indiana leapfrogging Tennessee. You had BYU leapfrogging Tennessee. Both Indiana and BYU shot up 3 spots in the rankings, and Tennessee stood pat, despite the fact that Tennessee beat Mississippi State with relative ease last weekend. Indiana went on the road at Michigan and got a 1-possession victory against a 500 Michigan team. BYU needed a last-second field goal, a 4th down penalty from Utah to rally to win in that game. So it didn't really make a lot of sense as to Indiana and Prague last week, despite the fact that the Tennessee won. So I start with that. But then even bigger than that, it was curious what the committee did with Georgia as compared to Miami.
I think Blake,
I think we lost you for a minute.
Yeah, we have Blake. He was talking about what Georgia did compared to Miami. We'll see if we can get Blake back on there. What did you think, Caleb, as we'll try to get Blake back on? What did you think of the Georgia drop compared to Miami?
Yeah, it's that's a great point he brought up, because I guess the best case you can make is Georgia didn't just lose to Ole Miss. They got the break speed off of them by Ole Miss, whereas Miami lost by, I think it was like 1 possession to Georgia Tech. So they may go there, but like, it's Ole Miss versus Georgia Tech, guys. Like, what do you think Ole Miss would do to Georgia Tech on a neutral field? I mean,
absolutely hammer them.
Oh, they would absolutely destroy them. Yeah, it's again, it goes back to our last topic. I'm wondering how much this is between doing a TV show and also choosing the path of least resistance. They kind of very much went with and this is something Josh Pate rants about a lot, Dave, but it's you are what your record says is one of the stupidest beliefs. Bill Parcells said that, and it makes me question his intelligence as a coach. I think he was just lucky to win 2 Super Bowls, because the greatest lie in the history of sports is that you are what your record says you are. And that's never truer than in college football, that it's a lie. And they seem like they're just going based off the you are what your record says mantra. And I don't understand that, which they flipped from last week. It feels like they're choosing the path of least resistance.
All right, I think we got Blake back. Sorry about that, Blake. I'm not sure what happened. It's a rainy day in Knoxville. Maybe the weather got in our way. But you were talking about Miami's drop compared to Georgia's drop.
Yeah, Miami drops 5 spots. Georgia drops 9 spots, both having lost a game last weekend. Georgia lost to a better team. Now, it was a more decisive loss for Georgia, whereas Miami's was close. But it just doesn't really stack up, the fact that Georgia dropped 9 spots and Miami dropped 5. I think what this actually is probably not so much conscious anti-SEC bias. I think what it probably is in reality is this committee is showing a record bias and an eye test bias above all else. And so that's how you get a team like Indiana ranked at number 5 in the rankings, because Indiana has no losses. They're 10-0. So there's a record bias, and Indiana also looks really good on the eye test. And so you combine those 2 factors, and I think that's why you have Indiana in the top 5 in the rankings. So to this point, it does sort of present, I think, as an anti-SEC bias. And as I wrote, sort of tongue in cheek, I worry about Texas. What's going to happen to Texas when the CFP committee realizes that Texas is now in the SEC? Oh my gosh, are they going to fall in the rankings? No, but yeah, I think what this is a record bias, and like I said, an eye test bias.
Well, Blake, actually, to your point, though, isn't there an argument that Texas is too high? Because that is a record bias. Texas has their best win is Vanderbilt. I mean, they played the worst schedule in the SEC. So I guess where I would come back is, do you think they're so nervous about SEC bias when you're taking schedule strength over record that they're now choosing the path of least resistance, which is to get the least amount of controversy by just going based off record?
I don't think they're probably, consciously worried about having an SEC bias one way or the other. And it's also worth pointing out, like, all this stuff right now is interesting, and it's fodder for us and it's fodder for fans. But then when it comes to selection day, the committee does whatever it wants. It throws out whatever it's been doing previous weeks out the window. I mean, last year they persistently had Florida State above Alabama. Alabama wins the SEC. And they decide, well, they don't want Florida State above Alabama anymore, and so they reverse course on that. I mean, last week they thought Tennessee was better than BYU in Indiana, and then this week, without really any evidence last weekend to suggest otherwise, they vault Indiana and BYU past Tennessee. So, one week to the next, they don't really, follow the same method, it doesn't seem like. And that's not just this year, that's kind of historically. And I think that's kind of maddening to fans and media at times. But, so I just think, though, that like what they're doing now doesn't necessarily mean that's what they're going to do on selection day. And we've seen that, time and again over the years. So, as far as Texas at number 3, I think a team that has a pretty good argument right now for being undervalued is still BYU. I know the committee got a lot of blowback from myself included last week when they had BYU all the way down at number 9. And it was like the committee listened to all that feedback maybe, and or at least woke up on BYU. And now they're at number 6. And it was kind of strange to see them leapfrog Tennessee, but maybe they should have been ahead of Tennessee all along. But I still think BYU is too low. And whether you think BYU is a good team or not, or whether a loss is coming, like, they've gotten to this point with a 9-0 record. And unlike Indiana, like, they've actually played some teams. BYU has a really good road win. It was back in September, but they went to SMU, maybe the best team in the ACC, and BYU beat them. BYU crushed Kansas State. It's like those wins happened back in September. And so they're almost kind of forgotten about in the rankings. Like, I mean, why is Texas ahead of BYU? Why is Penn State ahead of BYU? That to me doesn't really make any sense. Now, if BYU goes out and wins the Big 12, it doesn't matter because BYU is going to get a bye into the quarterfinals and be seeded number 3. But I mean, I think there's a handful of teams that have an argument for being ranked higher, and I think BYU's a strong one to start the conversation with, because I think everybody calmed down when they the committee reversed course and catapulted BYU from 9 to 6. But it's, as I said, I still think BYU could be higher. They could be ahead of Texas and Penn State based on not necessarily how they looked against Utah, but body of work. What they've accomplished this year is pretty strong, really.
Caleb, when it comes to BYU, has a strong notion that it's an anti-polygamy bias. Caleb, would you like to share that with Blake?
No, Blake. Okay, I'm getting your point, but like you mentioned earlier at the beginning that it was about eye tests, and I get like the leap for BYU makes less sense to me than the leap for Indiana. Even though if you want to make the case just comparing BYU and Indiana in a vacuum, I get it. And BYU has a better resume, but based on last week, there's nothing BYU did between last week and this week to vault 4 spots the way they did, because beating Utah on the road, yes, but because of a terrible call by the officials against a 4-5 team down to its 3rd string quarterback, how can anybody justify saying, "Oh, that was that impressive moment was enough to leapfrog them 4 spots"?
Yeah, they leapfrog 3, but you can't justify it based off last week. I think this is an admission. They're not going to say this, but I think this is an admission by the committee that they blew it on BYU last week. I mean, honestly, I think that's what this is. They blew it on BYU in week 1. They had them at number 9. They got more blowback about BYU, I think, than any other team. I wrote an entire column based around where BYU was last week, and I wasn't the only one. Like, I think they got a strong amount of blowback. You can't convince me that these guys and women live in a vacuum. These committee members, they're not like, a sequestered jury, right? Like they can get on their phones during the weeks and read themselves being bashed by what they did week over week. And so, yeah, if you're just basing the vault on Utah, it makes no sense. But the committee says, oh, we start from scratch every week. Like we start with a fresh piece of paper. It's not like the AP ballot where you're like, well, I voted teams like this week. And so, it's a week later, everybody won. I'll just keep them where they're at. No, the committee says they don't do that. They start from scratch every week. And what it looks like is it's an admission that they screwed up on BYU in week 1. And so now it looks strange for them to elevate BYU 3 spots, but I mean, we're going to keep screwing up, so it's stupid, and correct our rankings. But I think they screwed up in week 1, and I think they're still screwing up on BYU. Now, if eye test is the end all be all, then I guess BYU doesn't blow teams out, and I think that's why BYU is being ranked behind Indiana. Is aside from Michigan, Indiana has blown out a lot of teams this year. And so the committee likes blowouts. I mean, I think they're signaling that with Indiana being ranked where they're at.
I have a notion in the back of my head, and if you want to say this is a crazy conspiracy theory, that's fine. You can go right ahead, Blake. But I have a notion that it used to be Big Ten versus SEC. And now those two groups of power brokers have decided that they're one day going to put together a super conference, and it's going to consist mostly of Big Ten and SEC teams. And I think to that point, they're working together. And I would bet, and I would bet lunch on this. I'd be glad to buy you lunch for coming on regardless. But I would bet lunch or whatever that there will be the same number of Big Ten teams and SEC teams, the same number that make the college football playoff at the end of the year. What do you think of that notion? Is that a crazy conspiracy?
Well, I mean, I think it's shaping up as having the same number of teams. Is that going to be the case because those teams are have their thumb on the scales? I don't know about that. Like, I don't really. I mean, the Big Ten is being valued above any other conference, where I feel like the SEC is being undervalued. At least the creme de la creme of the Big Ten. I mean, they've got 4 teams in the top 5. So, the logic on the Big Ten versus the SEC is it's not really in lockstep. So I can't say that I feel like these conferences are kind of being treated the same, because I don't think they are. But to the notion that they're going to wind up with the same number of teams, whether conspiratorial or not, I think they are going to end up with the same number of teams based on the Big Ten's got 4 teams incredibly well positioned to make the playoff, whereas the SEC, I think after last weekend, maybe could have had a case for 5, but when you look at these rankings, it's harder to see a path for 5 teams. So I think they're going to end up with 4 as well. My question, though, is what does the committee do with Indiana if they lose decisively against Ohio State? Because like when you see Indiana at 5, you think, okay, they don't have to beat Ohio State. They could be fine at 11-1 and they're in. But again, we just go back to what the committee did this week. They dropped Georgia from 3 to 9, or from 3 to 12. They dropped them 9 spots after 1 game. If Indiana drops 9 spots after 1 loss, they're going to be out of the playoff. So I think there's a lot of Indiana fans right now saying like, oh, we're at number 5. We're golden. Even if we lose to Ohio State, there's no chance of them being out of the playoffs. I don't think it's as cut and dry like that. I think that logic is based on like AP poll logic, right? Like it's, in the AP poll, maybe they wouldn't drop all the way out of the playoff from a loss to a really, really good Ohio State team. But all bets are off with the playoff committee. And if the committee decides, after seeing Indiana at Ohio State, that they suddenly don't like them so much anymore, I don't think Indiana's spot is guaranteed. They're in good position, but unless they beat Ohio State, I don't think they're guaranteed in. I think they could get in at 11-1. I don't think it's automatic.
Blake, I want to throw this out there, and this is what I think a big concern is, and you tell me. There's this whole thing that the Big Ten plays 9 conference games, the SEC plays 8, but every one of these SEC teams that has 2 losses that's being held back, that we both agree by higher teams, every single one of them, down to Texas A&M, played a significant marquee non-conference game, except for Ole Miss, because Lane Kiffin's not going to do that because he doesn't care to. But every other one did. If they're not going to give the SEC credit for doing that, whereas the Big Ten, yes, that 9th conference game is like against Northwestern or somebody, so it's not the same tier. Aren't they eliminating the incentive for SEC teams to schedule marquee non-conference games in the future?
I don't think they care what the SEC does in their conference or non-conference games. Like the committee, they're not ESPN executives. They don't. I really don't think the committee cares if the SEC plays 8 or 9 conference games. I mean, if you're Jim Grobe, a committee member, why do you care how many conference games? I mean, it might affect.
Well, I don't just mean that. I don't mean the 8 or 9. I mean also just not even scheduling tough out of conference. Why not at this point just play just 4 group of 5 or FCS schools at home out of conference at this point?
I mean, I think the committee would say you can do whatever you want with your non-conference schedule, and we don't care.
Like, to the detriment of college football fans.
I mean, but why does Jim Grobe care about that? Why does Chris Ault care? Jim Grobe, spent 40 years in coaching, including 20 years at Ohio University in the MAC. Why does Jim Grobe care whether Tennessee plays NC State or plays NC A&T? I mean, I don't think this is a some sort of message to do this, that, or the other with your conference scheduling. I don't think the members of this committee care. I'm not saying that their rankings aren't based on who you go play and who you beat. I'm saying, like, I don't think it's a message to do this or that in your scheduling, because I don't think they care. I think they feel like their job is to rank the teams in the order they say fit. And it doesn't mean that I agree with their rankings, but I don't think that there's some sort of like greater notion of or doing something for the greater good of college football. Their job is to rank the teams, and I think that's all that really the committee members think about. And it's not like some sort of Machiavellian movements to make teams do this or that in their scheduling. And really, I don't think it's going to matter anyway, because this is a 2-year playoff format. I do not think this is the playoff format we'll have a couple years from now. And like non-conference scheduling is scheduled so far out anyway. Like, in so much as you were trying to send a message about non-conference scheduling, teams really probably wouldn't be doing anything about that until several years down the line anyway. And by then we're going to have a different playoff format. So it all becomes kind of a moot point.
Yep. Blake, I appreciate it. Where are you this week? Are you traveling?
Yeah, so I'll be at Tennessee, Georgia. I'll be in Athens.
Oh, okay. Have a safe trip there. I think Grits is the name of my favorite restaurant there in Athens. Have you checked that out?
Oh, well, we can't stay in Athens anymore. Way too expensive. Those were the glory days. Dave.
Yeah.
We stay in Atlanta and in the outskirts of Atlanta now.
Well, then you can go Papados. That's right there on the Windy Hill exit. I'll tell you a funny story sometime about the only time I got cussed out by Mike Strange, and it has to do with going to the wrong Marriott. Blake, have a great day, buddy. Safe travels.
Okay, good talking to you.
See you, buddy. Blake is absolutely bringing it. We appreciate that. His appearance brought to you in part by our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. Check out what you can get for free and the discounts from Dynasty Pools and Spas just off the Athens exit on I-75. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas. All right, Caleb, let's get to 5 balls to watch. I'm sorry, 5 Bulldogs. 5 Bulldogs to watch in the upcoming Tennessee-Georgia game. I want to see where Carson Beck falls on your list as let's count them down. Steve Hamer, former Vol, will join us to talk some Tennessee hoops here just shortly in a few minutes. But 5 Bulldogs to watch in the upcoming game, Tennessee-Georgia, as Georgia is just about a 9-point favorite. What do you got, Caleb?
So injury reports have thrown this for a loop. Georgia is in way worse shape than Tennessee. I can tell you that right now. But number 5, down at number 5 on the list is Dylan Bell. I kind of debated who to go with, Dave, for Georgia with their kind of offensive weapon. They really don't have many, in particular with Trevor Etienne questionable in this game and Anthony Evans questionable in this game. I don't know if Trevor Etienne's going to play. Maybe you have more insight on that, but I think they're going to go with Dylan Bell as their all-purpose player. He has over 100 rushing yards, over 400 receiving yards on the year. So I think that's the one player to look out for. But I mean, I'll say this, and this is the biggest difference between Georgia's team this year and last year. They don't really have a weapon on offense.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll say this too. I think their lack of leadership could crop up this weekend because they suddenly have 2 losses. Do some players say, I'd really like to save myself for the NFL because I don't think this is a championship team, even if they were to make a college football playoff. I think there have been times where Georgia's leadership has been better than even their elite players. But I don't think that's the case this year. I think in the leadership category, Tennessee's got the lead. Who's next in Bulldogs to watch?
All right. So up next in Bulldogs to watch, we are going to go to Chaz Chambliss. He is their jack linebacker. He's their edge rusher. I mean, do we really need to break down why Tennessee's offensive line and their pass protection has struggled this year? That's the guy they got to look out for the most. He could give them hell if they're not careful.
Can I tell you something?
What's up?
I'm not worried about Tennessee's offensive tackle play at all anymore.
Interesting. They still struggled in the first quarter of games, and then they get it together. Last week doesn't count. It was Mississippi State. That's the worst defense in the SEC.
Yeah, I think they're competent. I think they're, in fact, even good. So there you go. And I think Lance Hurd, slow-moving individual, as he was called by Ollie Lane earlier in the year, I think that was because he was unsure what to do and where to go. And I think that makes that can do 2 things for a player, and especially in basketball. It makes you look like you're not playing with effort, or it makes you look like you're not very athletic. And I think that's what it did to Lance Hurd. I think that uncertainty is gone now, and he knows what to do. Who's next? Bulldogs to watch.
Number 3 on my Bulldogs to watch, I have Carson Beck at number 3. You watch him just to see if he'll help you win the game more than anything. But it's kind of by default that he's number 3 as the quarterback. I mean, he's not the most important player in this game. It's what Tennessee can do against Georgia's defense largely, but I have Carson Beck in here just because he's Carson Beck in the quarterback.
I would have him number 1, and that's a cop-out because I don't think Georgia has playmakers, and I think it depends on him to thread the needle, which he's asked to do too often and which he doesn't do at a high level. So I would actually have him number 1. It's kind of a cop-out to say the quarterback in every game is the most important player, and I see what you're doing. But, yes, I think he could go out there and blow it for Georgia pretty easily. Who's next, Caleb?
Okay, so number 2, Nazir Stackhouse is number 2, the nose tackle for Georgia. Not a stats guy, but he does everything to draw up attention in the interior. Tennessee's had the best interior offensive line in the SEC this year. That's why they've been able to run the ball with Dylan Sampson. That's the matchup, Dave. Cooper Mays versus Nazir Stackhouse. That's literally the matchup to decide this game, I think. And I think Cooper Mays could actually win that, but Nazir Stackhouse is, I mean, he's the type of nose tackle that you would spend a first-round draft pick on, and he's never going to get you more than 10 tackles in a year, but he'll command so much attention that it doesn't
You remember
matter.
when Kirby Smart got the job? He was incredibly honest after looking at their roster. He said the biggest thing that we have to get, talking about Georgia, is we have to get the big athletic guys. And he was referring to the guys that they had at Alabama when he was the assistant coach there. This is that type of guy. Tennessee really doesn't have that type of guy. They thought it was going to be Elijah Simmons. And I'm just talking about a guy who takes up space. You don't really care if he gets a lot of sacks. They've got quick pass rushers in the interior that I think rely more on speed and quickness than they do just pure size and brute power. So, Caleb, this is the type of guy that Kirby Smart pointed to and said it can change you from being good, a 10-win football team like Mark Richt had, to a championship football team. I think that's a very astute pick by Caleb Calhoun.
Yeah, it's why Nick Saban and Kirby Smart prefer the 3-4. Because if you get a nose tackle who can command that attention, that's basically 2 defensive tackles. So effectively, you're running a 4-4 in that moment with 4 defensive backs or 5 defensive backs. You know what I'm like, whatever the nickel is. But yeah, it's basically like having an extra lineman up there.
I'll tell you what, this sounds insano, but I could make the argument that Vince Wilfork was every bit as important as Tom Brady in a lot of those Patriots championship runs. If you like to watch trench football, which I do, and I don't watch the ball a lot of the times, I know that sounds crazy, but that guy was taking up 3 dudes for I think 4 of those championship runs. All right, what are we down to? 2 or 1, Caleb?
We're down to number 1.
Okay, well, we're going to tease that as it's 5 Bulldogs to watch, brought to you by Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best.
The number 1 Bulldog to watch is...
All right, this is going to be controversial. So I'm going to address one player real quick because Dave, he's not on my list, but Georgia has their own Will Brooks, and it's Dan Jackson. A walk-on safety who is great at playing in position, who has a couple interceptions of the year.
Dad was a coach.
Was his dad a coach?
No, I don't know. Deceptively fast.
Yes, exactly. All those things.
Yes.
And I respect Dan Jackson, and I think he's done very good, but sometimes the most popular person on a team is the guy who's not starting every play, and people fall in love with him a little too much. And now Will Brooks is starting every play, so that's a little different. But Georgia fans think he's better than Malachi Starks. He's not better than Malachi Starks, guys. Y'all need to get that out of your head, okay? And Malachi Starks is still the best player on this defense, the best player on this team. And if Tennessee... And he's going to be crucial in a couple of ways. He's a great open field tackler. So if Dylan Sampson is going to make those big plays when he's running the ball, he's going to have to evade Malachi Starks in the secondary. But also, very importantly, Nico Iamaleava or Gaston Moore, whoever's playing, is going to have to account for him. I don't think he's going to bail out Gaston Moore with a bunch of pass interference penalties the way Mississippi State did last week. Because, Gaston Moore's 3D level chest was, if I underthrow this ball, I'll draw a pass interference. He wasn't thinking that, guys. But Malachi Starks is the most important player on their team.
Let's get to Steve Hamer, my favorite, in 60 seconds. Talk some Tennessee Vol basketball as they reigned victorious last night. Steve Hamer's appearance brought to you in part by our good friends at TristarHatsCo.com. Use the promo code HOOKED and get 10% off.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TristarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TristarHatsCo.com. That's TristarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TristarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without...
One of my all-time faves. Yes, we've done play-by-play together of indoor arena football. That seems like a long time ago, and that was weird. Still Steve Hamer. How are you, sir?
Man, I'm doing great. Doing really, really well. The Tennessee Thundercats, man. You're bringing it full circle, brother.
Do you remember, that is the only time that I've been a part of a game in which a team kicked off in both halves. Do you remember that? Because the young man who was the substitute quarterback of the Thundercats had never started a game really in a high school or been a captain or whatever. So they go out there and you've won the flip and you're supposed to say, we defer to the second half. And he goes, we'll kick.
We'll kick. I remember that, man.
Yeah. Steve went crazy. Steve was in the second half. They started the second half, and the Tennessee Thundercats kick again. And Steve's going, something's wrong. Something's wrong. And I was like, Steve, I agree. I don't know what's going on.
Wait a minute. You're supposed to say we defer. We defer. And I remember like you and I looking at each other like, what is going on? This is bizarre.
I also remember I hate thieves, and I've never stole these from you, but I remember we had to share a room, and Caleb, his sleeping trunks or whatever you want to call it was his game-worn Celtics shorts, and I was like, man, if he leaves those laying out, I might just take them.
That's when he played for Boston. Steve, I'm actually a little bit familiar. I'm a lot younger than both you guys. Sorry, just had to throw that out. But I am actually very familiar. I am actually very familiar with you because I was born and raised in Memphis, and I know you were teammates with Todd Day when you played for the Celtics. And that is, you are two players that Tiger fans really thought they could land on their basketball team in the 90s. They thought they had both you guys.
Yeah, it was Larry Fitch back in the day. That was the head coach of Memphis State University Tigers. And, it was an all-out assault and onslaught to try to land, Todd Day, to try to land me, Stanley Caldwell from Union City, Tennessee, LaMarcus Golden from, there in the backyard of Memphis State. And all four of us decided to matriculate and take our talents elsewhere, 3 of us landing here at UT, and Todd obviously having an illustrious and a great career over at the University of Arkansas. So, a lot of fond memories of those players. Tony Delk being another one from nearby, Brownsville, Tennessee, elected to go to the University of Kentucky. So, it was a time in which Memphis State was doing well. But man, it just I wanted to get away from home and get out of that backyard and go away. And it's one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Yeah. Hey, Steve, can you still dunk?
You know, Dave, I haven't tried to dunk, man. I get this question from my 19-year-old son all the time.
It shows my childlessness.
I really do. He poses this question all the time. Like, Dad, I don't think you can do it anymore. And, you know, I like to believe, man, I'm 7 feet tall, maybe 6'10", maybe, I don't know, whatever it is now. You know, when you get older, your bones will compress, and, you know, you and I guys are probably going to meet in the middle one day. We'll be looking at each other eye to eye. But I think I still can. I think, you know, I can still do that.
I believe you can. All right, shoot, Caleb. Let's talk about these Vols.
Yeah. Steve, I have been higher on this team than Dave has been this year. And I want to know your thoughts on this. I get Dave's point that they don't have a Dalton Connect. But after watching last night's game, and Darlington Dubar still has not joined the team yet, JP Strell is banged up, I get the sense that as a whole, they have more options this year. So while they don't have a Dalton Connect, they have 4 or 5, maybe a little bit lesser Dalton Connects that they could turn to at any moment. What do you think of that analysis?
I think that's pretty spot on. You know, what we lost singularly, I think we gained collectively as a team. You know, replacing Dalton Connect, man, you're just not going to be able to do it, right? Because he is a true diamond in the rough. If you were to have told anyone 1 year ago, you know, maybe 13 months ago, that Dalton Connect would have been the unanimous first-team All-American, he would have been runner-up for the Naismith Player of the Year. He would subsequently go on and be drafted by the Los Angeles Lakers and play alongside one of the greatest to ever do it in LeBron James. You would have said, man, you are crazy. This kid came from Northern Colorado. We don't even know if he's going to start. We don't know how good he is. So for him to go in and to have the work ethic that he employed while he was here, it speaks volumes about him. But now that he's matriculated on to the next level, I think that we are better, Dave, and I mean that. I think that we are better this year and more well-rounded at all positions than we were at any point last year. And you look at the statistics, they say it is so. I mean, Chaz Lanier, I know that we're only 3 games in, but he's shooting almost 60% from the 3. Igor Milicic, I know it was going to be tough to replace Josiah Jordan-James and all that he means as a glue guy, but look at what Igor did last night. Double-double, shot the 3 in transition, ran the floor, caught alley-oops, and then you look at Felix Akpara. Sure, he does not have the offensive prowess right now that a Jonas Adu has. That being said, he's a much more polished player in terms of his physicality. He's a better shot blocker. He's a better rim protector. And I think he is going to be a much needed infusion of talent from that 5 position. So I tend to think that we are going to be better this year than we were last year.
Let me ask you, of those players that you mentioned, Milicic, Lanier, and Darlin Stone, out of those 3, who are you most excited about? Because I could make an argument, and I know Dubar's time has been a little bit limited for a couple of different reasons that we don't have to get into, but which of those 3 players are you most excited about when March rolls around?
I think I'm most excited about, the easy answer is Chaz Lanier, because, guys, I tend to think that we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg with Chaz Lanier. And you'll have people that will say, well, go back and look at what he did at Indiana in the exhibition game. He really struggled, shot, I believe, 2 of 12 from the 3-point line. But I tend to also think that that is an aberration, right? And not something that we're going to see on a nightly basis. Chaz has all the tools in his tool belt. He's going to be a spot up shooter. And in Coach Barnes' system, he can really flourish because of the multitude of sets that they run in which they're going to try to run him off screens, either pick and pop or get him turning the corner and going downhill. And he can rise above and has such a soft touch from about 10 to 15 feet. And I think once he gets more comfortable in Coach Barnes' system, you're going to see him take over. Maybe not necessarily at the clip in which Dalton Connect took over games, but you're going to see him take over on a nightly basis, which is really going to complement the rest of the team because they're going to feed off of his confidence.
Interesting. Yep.
Yeah, Steve, talking about last night's game specifically, Tennessee beats Montana 92-57. And I want to know your thoughts, getting back to just, the level of options. Chaz Lanier gets in foul trouble. Zakai Ziegler gets in foul trouble. They both go to the bench. One of Tennessee's theoretical feature starters in Darling Stone Dubar, or at least solid players, is not out there. And JP Estrella is still playing banged up. And Montana is the favorite to win their conference this year. So with all those things collectively, do you think last year's team would have still been able to win that game by 35 points with all those things working against them?
I think that they would narrower margin victory. And I'll add in one that you didn't intimate, Money Williams last night. It's the first time a non-SEC player has come into the venue, that is the Summit, and put up 3 points in nearly a decade. So that kid, things are going to happen, right? Or one of two things is going to happen. Either Money Williams is going to go on and play at the next level this time next year, or he will not be at the University of Montana. He'll be playing for another Division I team somewhere across the country, because I can guarantee you this, some coaches were probably ringing his phone line, his cell phone line, immediately after that game last night. But with that being said, the bugaboo for Tennessee basketball over the last couple of seasons has been backup point guard play. We all know it. Zakai Ziegler is going to log a ton of minutes. He's going to log 36, 37 minutes a game. He's a warrior. But what's going to happen when he gets into foul trouble? Last night, I think that we saw a glimpse of what is to come in that Gainey stepped in, played minutes at the point guard position. And let's not overlook the fact that a certain freshman came in and got really impactful minutes early in that basketball game when Zakai Ziegler went out. You look at some of the lineups in had last night. It was almost like an audition at that backup point guard position, but Boswell came in, man, and acquitted himself very well and is starting to garner some attention from that coaching staff. So, to answer your question, I think they win convincingly last year, but maybe not at the 35-point clip that they were able to pull away with last night.
Just a point of reference is I want to go to our poll question that's on our YouTube page. I asked you the same question I asked Steve Hamer momentarily just a second ago, and that's brought to you by our friends at Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations. Your home search just got easier. They can help you with your credit. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat Mortgage, chat with 2Ts, mortgage.com. What UT player are you most excited about? Lanier gets 45% of the votes, but Igor's pretty close at 36%, Dubar at 18%. Caleb?
Yeah, I'm actually most excited still about Dubar because I feel like he could almost offset Dalton. Based on what I saw from him at Hofstra, Steve, am I crazy to think that he could almost replicate Dalton Connect with his style of play if he picks up the defense?
Yes. I think.
Yes, he's crazy, or yes, he can.
Good question. Yes, to both.
That sounds a little bit crazy to me, but
I think he can. I think he can make an impact right away, Caleb. Will he have the same type of impact that Dalton Connect? That's going to be hard to replicate. You go back and you look at the times that Dalton Connect literally went into a phone booth at a game last year and changed his outfit and put on the Superman's cape and came out and just had Bruce Pearl's staff just at hey, what are we going to do? Alabama, North Carolina, the list just goes on and on. When you talk about Darlin Stone Dubar, who, by the way, probably has one of the best names in college basketball, that's a really good name, Darlin Stone Dubar. I think he's athletic. I think he's going to be a capable shooter from the perimeter. But the thing that I like in Dave, the physicality to bring to the court. Tough guy, strong in the paint, and he's got the proclivity, if you will, to be able to catch the ball, spot up, shoot, or dribble drive and get around you and finish at the rim. So I think he's going to be a very capable player. We just got to get him, into form. And it was so good to see him not in street clothes last night, but to actually see him in a jersey. So that means a lot to him, I'm sure, and it means a lot to his teammates. And then they've got his back. He's going to be out there and he's going to produce.
Great stuff. Hey, I certainly appreciate the time, Steve. Hopefully we can do it again. For those that don't know, you are the director of Letter Winner Relations. So hopefully we can go grab lunch sometime and maybe exchange some phone numbers, because I bet you've got some good ones.
Absolutely, man. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend. Man, you took me way back in the time machine with the Tennessee Thundercats, man. We went through some battles together. So, man, it's an honor to be on with you guys. And please let me know if there's anything I can do for each of you.
Can I just one more quick point of reference, Steve, since you are from Middleton, but I know you were born in Grand Junction, if I'm not mistaken, and that borders Fayette County, or that's partially in Fayette County. My church from Memphis would do a camp every summer out in Fayette County, out in Moscow, Tennessee, called the Country Place.
Moscow.
The city slicker like me was like, this place is country. And I was like, where can I go just to get like a soda somewhere? And we found a little store off the place called Gherkins, which was where we would go every time. But we Memphians we really never really left the county.
No, it's where the hillbillies go to shop, man, in Grand Junction. That is we have no stoplights, man, just a couple of stop signs, man, and that's what you're gonna get, man, from Grand Junction, Tennessee.
Steve, we appreciate you, buddy. Have a fantastic day. I know it's rainy here in Knoxville, so be safe, sir. Appreciate
you guys. Thank y'all. Have a great day.
Appreciate that. Man. He's one of the best. Yeah, I hate thieves, but when I ask him, because he puts on his Celtic shorts, because we're getting ready to go to bed, split beds, Caleb, in case you're wondering. We had to share a room, because let's just say the Thundercats were not the most well funded production going on, and I just remember him putting on these shorts, and I'm like, those look like game worn shorts. And they were Celtic shorts. Now, they would have gone to my ankles. So if I would have stole them, it wouldn't have helped me. But as a huge Celtics fan, I'm like, this is unbelievable. And I didn't want to pepper him with questions. We might have also been staying at a casino. I can't remember if we were in Boise or Omaha, but it was one of the two places. That leads us.
Wait, out like in Nebraska or Idaho? You went out there for this?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That sounds kind of awesome.
Yeah, it was, and that team that team would still be around to this day, because they had great financial support if it had been run by somebody that had a little bit better scruples, and that he tried to make it into a regional team, like somebody from Louisiana is going to root for the Tennessee Thundercats, and that's when things went south. That leads us to our poll question. Steve's appearance is brought to you by our fantastic friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. Check out what you can get just for stopping by there Athens location, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas. Caleb, what's our poll question right now as the show is represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com?
All right, so our poll question is, what is more likely? Dave can dunk a 9-foot goal, Steve can dunk a 10-foot goal. Steve can dunk a 10-foot goal.
You think I can dunk a 9-foot goal? Do we have another physical challenge? Do we need to do Dunk Off 2024?
No, because I don't have ups at all. So no, we're not going to do a Dunk Off 2024.
I don't think I could dunk an 8-foot goal. I would be embarrassed to even go out there and try and video that. Now, we did do Bench Off 2024, which I dominated, but bank on it. Dave
set that challenge that no one set for him. He just wanted to show off his ability to lift.
Yeah, hit it this morning. It was a tricep, glutes, and hamstrings day. If you want the update, bank on it. Dave hit it hard in the gym. Brought to you by Commercial Bank, and bank on it. Dave cannot dunk a 9-foot goal, and Dave will stop referring to himself in the third person.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank.
All right, Caleb, it's time for our stat of the day. The stat of the day is brought to you by our fantastic friends at Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. hdknoxville.com. hdknoxville.com. Stat of the day is what, Caleb?
Oh, you're going to love this one. Are you buckled up?
Excited.
Are you ready?
I'm buckled in. I'm buckled up. I'm ready to dunk an 8-foot goal, maybe.
You can't dunk an 8-foot goal. You can't.
You don't think I could dunk an 8-foot goal?
Nope. I'm going there. All right, so stat of the day. Dylan Sampson on the year has 1,129 rushing yards. You ready for this, Dave? You ready for this?
Yes.
That's more than Georgia as a team has this year.
That's a pretty good stat of the day.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Dylan Sampson has been that freaking impressive, guys. Yeah. Georgia on the year has 1,117 rushing yards. So Dylan Sampson has outrushed the entire team of Georgia, which we underrate that as one of Georgia's biggest weaknesses, that they can't run the ball well.
No, I agree. It's not the same Georgia team. It's not. They're beatable. I'm telling you. And somebody asked me, Caleb, can this be a mental hang-up like the Florida game was? Because there was times in the 90s and 2000s and 2010s when I actually thought that Tennessee had the better team. And I do think going back and forth to class and all of that, and being asked about it, I thought it got in their heads. I don't think that's been the case with Georgia. I think more times than not, the better team has won over my lifetime, past 25 years or so that I've covered college football. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, there have been upsets in the series, but it's actually pretty comparable. Overall, I mean, Georgia's on a 7-game winning streak against Tennessee. Does anybody believe that Tennessee was better than Georgia in any of those 7 games? I mean, that's not even close. Georgia's been significantly better all 7 games. on this winning streak.
Oh, I think you said it backwards. Yeah, no. I agree with you. Georgia has been the better football team. And I thought, listen, when they were beating Drunken Ray Goff and stumbling Jim Donnan, they were better coached.
I was on SEC Unfiltered last night with a couple of Georgia guys, and I told the story that Jimmy told us about how Ray Goff didn't want to recruit Jamal Lewis. And then I mentioned the point that a couple other former players had told us he was on the sauce when they recruited him. And they're like, there's nothing you can tell us about Ray Goff that would surprise us.
Drunken Ray Goff shows up to your door to recruit your son. I can tell you one time, I'm not going to tell you who it is. Can I give a quick Uncle Dave moment before we get to the college football rooting interest if you want Tennessee to make the college football playoff?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I had a guy call me and say this player who went on to play at Georgia, wide receiver out of your neck of the woods, that he was no longer considering Tennessee. And I said, why? And they said because a Tennessee coach showed up to their house for the in-home visit, and was so intoxicated the grandmother threw him right out the door as soon as he walked in.
I know who you're talking about.
Okay,
I can name the wide receiver.
Don't tell
I won't name the coach, but I know the wide receiver. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Right. All right. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. The college football playoff rooting interest, who you need to be rooting for this weekend if you want Tennessee to make the college football playoff. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Give us 2 minutes. We'll tell you who to root for this weekend if you want Tennessee to make the college football playoff, and we'll get the results on that poll question. Can Dave dunk a 9-foot goal? Is that more likely than Steve Hamer on a 10-foot goal? Or we might add Caleb on a 7-foot goal. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Guess where I'm eating tonight? Asia Cafe. Over 5 locations to choose from. AsiaCafe.org. And they also have that awesome Cocoa Energy Booster coffee. It is awesome. Go to AsiaCafe.org. It'll get you through your day and feel good about it. Let's reset the poll question, Caleb, before we get to rooting interest. What do you got on the poll question? What is that right now?
Okay, so the poll question is still, if I'm looking, is what's more likely? Dave can dunk a 9-foot goal. Steve can dunk a 10-foot goal. Dave really wants to show off his athleticism.
No. There's one more. Got to maximize it. There's one more choice.
There's one more choice?
Yes.
I'm not actually seeing the other choice. I think you made a mistake, Dave. No, okay, here we go. Caleb can dunk a 7-foot goal. Dave just wants a moment to show himself off in athletic gear again, because the way hookers get their business is by showing off their body.
Do you think you could dunk a 7-foot goal?
Probably. Like, in all honesty, I could probably dunk a 7-foot goal, guys.
Okay, go ahead and click that like and subscribe button. I'm not sure that I could, actually. Do you believe I could ever dunk a 10-foot goal?
No.
I had 2 goals in life when I was a youth. It was to bench 300 pounds, and it was to dunk a 10-foot goal. Which of those 2 do you think I achieved?
Neither.
Oh, it's harsh. No, I got 300 pounds. True story. I got 300 pounds. I asked the guy if he helped at all, my spotter, and I was about 34 years old. And I thought, it's just going to be easy now. So I didn't work out for 6 weeks. I went and got my dog a case of beer, got on my boat, sat on my boat, didn't work out for 6 weeks, and I never got 300 pounds again. So I did that. I got this close. I could grab the rim on a 10-foot goal. Does that surprise you?
No, that actually, I know people who can grab the rim on a 10-foot goal. That don't make you special.
Yeah. But I couldn't get over it. And I thought, I'll get it eventually. Last week brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, your college football playoff rooting interest. Let me ask you this, Caleb. If it were to be Gaston Moore, which we've reported, we think it's Nico Iamaleava, and you could take a close loss to Georgia right now, one that's very competitive with a backup quarterback, and one of those, a good loss. I hate that term, good loss. But would that be in your best college football playoff rooting interest? I know it's to win in Athens, but where would that rank among the games you're about to give us? If you could guarantee, because Nico's not available, they go Gaston Moore, and it's a 17-16 game, and Tennessee almost pulls it out. Would that be worth rooting for? Do you think Tennessee would make the college football playoff with that on their resume?
Yes, I think they'll still be in the college football playoff race even if they lose. And I'm going to tell you this. Guys, we got to stop writing off the possibility that Georgia could still go to the playoff even if they lose. I mean, I don't know if 3 losses is going to be held against them.
I think this is an elimination game.
I'm not so sure, but okay.
Okay, last look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Who you need to root for this weekend?
The first step to better vision is to visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at ccteyes.com.
All right, Caleb. So Peyton's going to keep us realistic. If he doesn't think there's any chance that the particular team that we're rooting for will win, he's going to say,
that is total bullshit.
All right. So give us number 1. Who's in the rooting interest that Tennessee fans, if they want to make the college football playoff, need to root for or against?
All right, this is tier 1, by the way, because, again, we do this in tiers. Tier 1 is you think you want the game to go this way, but it could potentially work against you, but you're not sure, okay? So or I guess tier 5, lower tier. So tier 5. That game is Clemson and Pitt. Dave, you want Pitt to beat Clemson, because you don't want a situation where Clemson gets to the ACC title game and beats Miami, and then you could foresee 2 ACC teams going to the college football playoff game. Now, the reason you root for Pitt is I don't think Pitt's capable of winning the ACC title game if they beat Clemson.
I agree. And I believe Clemson and Miami are the only two teams that are benefited by the logo on the side of the helmet. I think that, yeah, out of the ACC, I think they're the only two teams. All right, who's
Not
next?
of the contenders because Florida State's in there too, but they're not going.
One and 9 or 1 and 8.
Yeah. All right. So now this is about teams you want to avoid seeing in the college football playoff, and I keep going to the Group of 5 route because the Group of 5 teams are the biggest threat for Tennessee in the first round. You want San Jose. You want Boise State to beat San Jose State, and you want Washington State to beat New Mexico because you want at all costs. You don't want Army getting into the college football playoff. You don't want Army getting in at all.
That's hot.
I agree with you too much, Caleb. Give me another one.
All right. So now we go to games that will improve Tennessee's schedule strength, which basically is teams Tennessee has played. You want them to win their games. Not crazy to think about, right?
No.
A lot of them actually don't play this weekend, but let's just throw out the ones that do. And I'll start with the lower ones, the most obvious ones. Unfortunately for Tennessee, Kent State is not going to has already lost because that's all they do is lose. So
that's all they do is lose.
I mean, it's true.
They're awful.
They are so bad.
I remember talking to my gambling expert, and I was like, "How bad are they?" And he said, "Well, they would be underdogs to 23 Division II teams."
I can believe that. I can actually believe that. And so now UTEP doesn't play, funny enough, and NC State doesn't play. So now we just go straight to the SEC teams that will help Tennessee strength the schedule. You want Alabama to beat Mercer. You want Kentucky to beat Murray State. But here's the one you really want to watch. You want Florida to beat LSU. May not happen. Probably won't happen. But if it does, it'd be great for your schedule strength.
I'm not going to say that it may not happen because to me, Florida is the most unpredictable team that's out there.
That's possibly true. You're right.
I mean, remember we had Edgar Thompson on, and Florida was like a 7-point favorite at Mississippi State, and he said, or maybe even 11 or more, and he said, "I don't know that they can score that many points. I wouldn't gamble."
No, he said he didn't know that he could keep Mississippi State from scoring. I think he thought they could score. I thought he did think they could keep.
No, he didn't think Florida could score that many points.
I know. I think he thought Florida could score. I think he just thought they couldn't stop Mississippi State. Maybe I'm reading it backwards.
Okay, I thought he meant that Florida couldn't score that many points. Since then, Florida's been able to score, and you thought they'd be okay last week. And then because they got the dreaded vote of confidence, and Billy Napier forgot all the details, the detail-oriented Billy Napier, and went out there and just bleep the pooch, if you know what that means. All right, Caleb, who's next?
All right, so now we get to games you want to happen because you want teams in Tennessee's way for the college football playoff to get knocked out. This includes teams ahead of Tennessee and teams behind Tennessee who could sneak their way in if things went a certain way. So Northwestern Ohio State, you're rooting for Northwestern.
Like, that is total bullshit.
There's no way that Northwestern are going to beat Ohio State.
No way, but you're rooting for them. Virginia, Notre Dame. You are a hardcore Virginia fan. Virginia did upset Pitt recently, Dave. Don't sleep on that game.
I'm not.
That's hot.
I still think Notre Dame has an upset loss in them, and I'm hoping for it because it'll be chaos because their schedule's terrible, and you would have a 2-loss Notre Dame team that the college football playoff would love to get in. So I'm like you and the Joker. I'm rooting for chaos. So I think they've got an upset loss in them, and I hope it's Virginia this week.
Yeah. And it definitely could be. And by the way, then it's 10-2 Notre Dame, and Texas A&M could win out and go 10-2. Texas A&M has a better resume, but Notre Dame beat Texas A&M at the beginning of the year. That would cause real chaos.
No, as far as a nationwide audience, they'd rather have Notre Dame and those golden domes in there than A&M. That's
exactly. So, all right. So, a couple of teams that are kind of on Tennessee's heels that you just want them out of the way. Boston College and SMU. You want Boston College to beat SMU just to get SMU out of the way. They're pesky right now. They're number 14.
That's hot.
All right.
Wisconsin and Oregon. You're rooting for Wisconsin. Again, not as relevant, but, doesn't hurt to have teams ahead of you lose. So Wisconsin, you're rooting for them, but it's not going to happen.
Okay. I don't think that's going to happen either. All right. Who's next?
Paris or Peyton?
Oh.
That's hot.
Oh, you think it will happen? You think it could happen?
No.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
No, I don't think it's going to happen.
All
Sorry.
right. All right, let's keep going.
What if Paris Hilton and Peyton Manning had a baby? What would that look like? All right, go ahead.
All right, so 3 more. You are rooting like heck, to quote Fulmer, for New Mexico State over Texas A&M, but that's not going to happen. You can Peyton me on that.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
All right, who's next?
2 more, then we get to the top tier game. Kansas and BYU, you're rooting like heck for Kansas, and honestly, don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Kansas upsets BYU, by the way.
That's hot.
I can go with that.
And lastly, just to shut Eli Drinkwitz up, you're rooting for South Carolina over Missouri because you don't want another 2-loss SEC team there at the end.
That's very doable. As a matter of fact, of all the ones you picked,
That's hot.
I think that's the most likely to happen.
Well, I
Would you
think that's
agree with
actually. Oh yeah, South Carolina's favored by double digits, but there is one more that tops all of these. Are you ready, Dave? You ready for the tier 1?
Is it
to help
Tennessee, Georgia? Because that should be tier 1.
No, because these are teams you should root for that aren't Tennessee related. Okay. The number 1 game you want to watch that's not Tennessee, Georgia this weekend, and it is crucial and it could do wonders. Arkansas, Texas. And by the way, that's not a gimme at Arkansas. And
No, it's not.
If Arkansas wins, that helps Tennessee's strength of schedule. And also, that knocks Texas just completely out of the running. Just completely. They're totally done given their strength of schedule.
That's
so
hot.
that is the game you want to root for above all others. If Arkansas beats Texas, Tennessee comes out in very good position whether or not they want to lose this weekend.
You see the QR code. It's right there. You can join Hooker's Corner, and that makes you available for what? Eligible, I should say. The weekly prizes, which include our fantastic Hooker t-shirts. It also includes a book, Celebrate 98 book. We give those away each and every Friday, plus our monthly grand prize, which, look over my shoulder here, is a mini helmet autographed by John Henderson, the former ball great, that you can win. We'll give that away, our monthly prize. And then you're also eligible for our Rick Terry's Grade 8 Garmin Challenge. What are you looking at, Caleb?
Sorry, I
Just like you're looking at my lap. All right, so, Rick Terry's Grade 8 Garmin Challenge. Rick Terry's Grade 8 Garmin Challenge. When we hit 8,000 subscribers, we will give away a Garmin worth over $1,000. That's going to be right behind me as of tomorrow. We love Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler, looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. And our great friends at Sports Treasures bring you that monthly prize, like the John Henderson autographed helmet, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates. Go to Sports Treasures TN on Facebook. And all you have to do is click on that QR code. You get increased recruiting coverage, more interaction with me and Caleb Calhoun. And who doesn't want that? We've got a series that's running right now of prospects that Tennessee and Georgia are both after. Prospects mostly for the 2026 class that they're both after that this game could affect. And Caleb, we'll talk more about that tomorrow. And I think you've said this too, I don't put a lot in one game, but I kind of do this because if Tennessee's able to beat Georgia in Athens, especially with Gaston Moore, I think it signifies a trend more than just a potential upset. So be sure and check out that series of Georgia and Tennessee prospects by joining Hooker's Corner. It's just $9.98 a month, and we appreciate the support. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We'll talk to you at 10 a.m. on Friday. What do Fridays mean? Ollie Lane, insight that you can only get. The center of attention, Ollie Oxen Free, Ollie Lane on a Friday. This show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Hit the like and subscribe button and have a fantastic afternoon. What are you going to say, Caleb?
Nothing. I'm just thinking of ways to do Ollie Lane puns in my head that I'm not going to say out loud.
And Ollie oop, or I don't know.
Ollie's. Never mind.
I don't even know what it is, and I'm scared to ask, so I'm not going to do so. Have a
It's
fantastic...
a Nick Saban joke. Nick Saban's favorite type of joke with his players.
These?
Ollie's.
Oh, all right.
You know what it sounds like?
Ollie Lane.